Good evening. Welcome to the ShadowTrader video weekly for Sunday, August 24th, 2008. In last week's edition of the video weekly, we talked about the relationship here between the crude oil chart on the weekly, this is the futures chart here, coming into this support level at the 107, right? And what that may mean for this chart here, which is the S&P, which at that time I was showing you that it had, just about that much more to go before trendline resistance. Since then, two very interesting things have happened in the broad market, which are making this, actually three things, I'll get to them in a second, which are making this extremely tough to navigate right now. We had a failure to make a new swing high here, which was very early this week. That was on Monday. The markets gapped up just slightly and then fell like a stone, and then followed through with a break of the uptrend line on Tuesday, which is interesting because that has been held since early July, right, since the crude started coming down. And then we get this rally on Friday that takes us right back up into range. Reason being, of course, voila, crude again, right? Same thing. Friday, everybody was thinking this would fall through a little bit higher, but no, crude is telling us, I'm playing off the weekly chart. That's what basically the, as we go back to the QM number F, right? What was it telling us? It was saying the breakout, the support level here from the prior breakout area was not my support. It was only my temporary support, and I'm ready to go down a little bit further, and I would like to test the 107 area at the ascending trend line. So basically what's going on here in the broad market is this is making things really, really hard for swing trading. It's really just a kind of sit on your hands type market and kind of be on the sidelines or go for the short, quick trades that are like, against resistance or counter trend, to kind of exploit a lot of the choppy action in the broad market here. Let's take a quick run through these indices before we get some other stuff. The Dow is looking similar. Again, the rally here was actually strongest in the Dow on Friday than in any of the other majors, except for the Russell, which was also 1.7%. We can take a look at that. Right, the Russell had a pretty good rally day on Friday, but the S&P was up 1.13 and the Nasdaq was up 1.44. And remember, again, as far as crude, at the same time, this was down 5% from here to here. So again, it's what the same situation that we've been seeing for a while with this, sort of tying in of the crude backing off, and that makes stocks go up and vice versa, is not ending yet. And I think that there's going to be some sort of a showdown here at this weekly trend line, which is coming up. But before then, I would say just be trading lightly, if at all. It's just really hard to gauge right now. There's not a lot happening. I did a scan this weekend, as I always do, of, like I said, it's like 1,500 stocks or whatever. And I can tell you that this weekend's scan returned the lowest number of setups on either side that I've ever had. I wrote down about 4 or 5 names from last week that were holdovers from my scanning last weekend, and on top of that, I was only able to add about 7 or 8 names, not even, I would say 5 to 6 names on the longs, and on the shorts, I came up with 6 ideas, and I'll show you some of these in a second. But this is very, very important because I've mentioned this in past videos many, many times. What's the number one, signal telling us if the market's doing something or if the market's just acting really difficult? How the scans come out on the weekends, right? How many stocks are looking bullish? How many are looking bearish? If they all have just choppy patterns and nothing's really jumping out at me, then I kind of know I'm not missing much of anything. All right, and that's pretty much what we have here. I continue to like Apple. Let's look at some ideas. Let's look at if we stay strong here. Look at the Apple here. Weekly is showing this action here, right? Which could be a trend line break, right? Daily looks really good off kind of like a bull flag. I like the way the volume seems to have been going lower here, right? Kind of a pattern of lower volume here, which is not bad. The NDX is obviously the strongest. Google, I think, is kind of a disappointment here. Completely in the middle of the range. Absolutely doing nothing, and now you can see it's fallen. It's actually trading below this trend line, right? This was the buy here on the break, and then it retests these lows, and what does it do? It doesn't fall back to the backside of the trend line to hold. It goes below it, and then notice that on Friday, which was such a strong day, if I erase this, you can see it. What did Google do? It did absolutely nothing. It made a doji. So, a lot of these leading names, Amazon, On the dailies, very tricky pattern, I would say. I mean, congratulations to anybody who bought this breakout here and played this part, but after that, where? I mean, where's the entry? You don't have a trend line break yet. We called a long entry here in the newsletter on a pullback here, right? And that lasted an entire day. The stock did go higher, both on the day it was mentioned in the letter and the next day a little bit higher, but again, just complete failure. So maybe over the trend line there'll be something. If you want, you can stop it down here. That's a little bit loose. Research in motion. Cup and handle, I would say, trying to form a cup, but to me just kind of sloppy. Juniper still looks okay on the longer term charts. We've been talking about SQNM in the newsletter. Those of you that are subscribers, we have a picture of this. We had a picture of this chart this week. So these are the types of things we put in the commentary each week and into the Bulls and Bears section where we tell you, where to get in, where to get out, etc. So Sequenom is one of the ones that continues to hold up, and it seems to be, something with basically getting ready for another break to the upside. I'm seeing possible support here in natural gas coming down to a similar trend line situation such as crude. So you may want to be looking at some XNG stocks pretty soon, at least for a trade, but it looks like I think that this bounce is going to fail, and this probably wants to come down, test this 500 area. Here's the safer bet, right? You can see that this possibly looks like it still has some room to move to the downside, so you may want to be looking at some of those. CNQR is another one that's looking very bullish. That's a weekly right there. MFE, which is McAfee, right? Also a hammer on two hammers on the weeklies. Probably wants to go a little higher to here at the 41, and then it's probably a counter trend short because I don't think it breaks out in this environment. On the weak side, I'll show you some ideas, specifically RBN. This is one I'm looking at, right? Notice how there was a kind of an increase in volume here on the Robbins and Myers, and the stock broke down. Volume was kind of decreasing a little bit on the move up. You had some indecision here, and I like how the stock didn't really react much at all to Friday's action, right? This is the best thing for shorts. This is what I always like to look for, where you get a market ripping, which is Friday. So you have DIA looking like this. That's the Dow, right? And then the RBN looks like this, where it was able to run with the market until about lunchtime, and then they just said, forget it. I'm not going anywhere, right? And look at the daily here. You have this nice rounded top trend line, and you can see that the stock's just starting to get tired and probably wants to, at the very least for a quick trade, test this 20 MA or the prior breakout area somewhere in the $42 area. So it's probably a move to be made there. All right, so to recap, go back to the S&P. Very tricky right here. Be very careful out there. Trade lightly. Not a heck of a lot is going on. The crude looks like it's showing that it wants to make another run lower, which would make sense because I think it wants to go to that 107 area, which I don't know if it holds up the market or not. I mean, it should prop up the market a little bit. The question is whether or not the S&P does go, back to the swing high and is able to break it. Diamonds, same thing. Again, the NDX looks clearer, but again, those horseman names, the four horsemen I just talked about, such as the Apple I do like. The research in motion I'm not too impressed with. The Google is not too impressive. The Amazon I think is going to be a tricky entry. But either way, on the long side, that's kind of where you do want to be looking. If you're really bullish on the market, you want to stay with the NASDAQ stuff. All right, so that's all for this week. On behalf of myself and the entire ShadowTrader team in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and of course, as always, all the good people in Chicago, Illinois, at the one and only Think or Swim, I wish you good trading and good night.